E.N.D here, day 3 for the spoilers of Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realm. Let's see the cards that have been spoiled today. Veteran Maze Explorer 3 and 1 white, it's a 3/4, enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon. If you don't know how to play Venture into the Dungeon, the new mechanic for Dungeons & Dragons, I did a tutorial explaining how this mechanic works. Planner Alley 3 and 2 white, it's a 3/3, flying whenever it attacks you venture into the dungeon. Exploration Torch for 1 and 1 white, artifact equipment, equipped creature get +1/+1, whenever equipped creature attacks you venture into the dungeon. Equip for 3. Secret Door for 1 blue, it's a 0/4, Defender 4 and 1 blue, venture into the dungeon, activate only as a sorcery. Fates Reversal for 1 and 1 black, it's a sorcery, return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, venture into the dungeon. Glittering Skeletons 3 and 1 black, it's a 4/3, when it dies you venture into the dungeon. Altar Guard Ranger 4 and 1 green, it's a 4/1, with reach, enters the battlefield, you create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Kick in the Door for 1 red, it's a sorcery, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, that creature gains haste until end of turn and can be blocked by walls this turn, venture into the dungeon. Pixie Guide for 1 and 1 blue, it's a 1/3, flying, if you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice +1 and ignore the lowest roll. Earth Cult Elemental 4 and 2 red, it's a 6/6, enters the battlefield, you roll a dice 20. If your score is 1 to 9, each player sacrifices a permanent. If it's 10 to 19, each opponent sacrifices a permanent. If it's 20, each opponent sacrifices 2 permanents. As you can see, this set will have more spells that use dice 20 rolls. A small note here, as confirmed by Mark Rosewater, spin downs are not dice 20s, therefore be aware when using these in sanctioned tournaments. Faradeh Fireball 3 and 2 red, it's an instant, it deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker and roll a dice 20. If your score is 1 to 9, it deals 2 damage to each player. If your score is 10 to 20, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. Contact Other Plane 3 and 1 blue, it's an instant, you roll a dice 20, told you there will be more cards rolling dice 20. If your score is 1 to 9, draw 2 cards. If your score is 10 to 19, scry 2, then draw 2 cards. If your score is 20, scry 3, then draw 3 cards. Sylvan Shepherd 2 and 1 green, it's a 2/3, with vigilance, whenever it attacks you roll a dice 20. If your score is 1 to 9, you gain 1 life, 10 to 19, you gain 2 life, 20, you gain 5 life. Spike Pit Trap for 1, it is an artifact, it has flash. For 5, tap, sacrifice it, choose target creature, then roll a dice 20. If your score is 1 to 9, it deals 5 damage to that creature. If it's 10 to 20, it deals 5 damage to that creature and you create a treasure token. Dragon Disciple for 1 and 1 white, it's a 1/3, enters the battlefield, you may reveal a dragon card from your hand. If you do, or if you control a dragon, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. Dragons you control have ward 1, very useful if you're playing dragons. Displacer Beast 2 and 1 blue, it's a 3/2, enters the battlefield, venture to the dungeon. For 3 and 1 blue, return it to its owner's hand. Drider 4 and 1 black, it's a 4/3, with reach. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a 2/1 black spider creature token with menace and reach. Chaos Channeler for 2 and 2 red, it's a 4/3. Whenever it attacks, roll a dice 20. If your score is 1 to 9, exile the top card of your library, you may play it this turn. If it's 10 to 19, exile the top 2 cards of your library, you may play them this turn. If it's 20, exile the top 3 cards of your library, you may play them this turn. Feywild Trickster 2 and 1 blue, it's a 2/2, whenever you roll 1 or more dice, create a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. Eccentric Apprentice 2 and 1 blue, it's a 2/2, flying, enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you completed the dungeon, up to 1 target creature becomes a bird with base power and toughness 1/1 and flying until end of turn. Lightfoot Rogue for 1 and 1 black, it's a 2/1, whenever it attacks you roll a dice 20. If your score is 1 to 9, it gains then touch until end of turn. If your score is 10 to 19, it gains +1/+0 and gains that touch until end of turn. If it's 20, it gets +3/+0 and first strike and that touch until end of turn. Critical Hit for 1 and 1 red, it's an instant, target creature gains double strike until end of turn. When you roll a natural 20, return it from your graveyard to your hand. Basically, if you roll a dice and you get a 20, you will return Critical Hit from your graveyard to your hand. You find some prisoners for 1 and 1 red, it's an instant, you choose 1, destroy target artifact, or exile the top 3 cards of target opponent's library, choose 1 of them. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. Wandering Bard 3 and 1 green, it's a 4/2, at the beginning of your end step, if a land enters the battlefield under your control, this turn venture into the dungeon. Faradeh Devil Chosen 2, 1 blue and 1 red, it's a 3/3, whenever you roll 1 or more dice, it gains menace and flying until end of turn. If any of those dice results is 10 or more, you draw a card. Borrowing of clan Andor 2, 1 white and 1 black, it's a 3/3, enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon. Whenever it attacks, return up to 1 creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield if you completed a dungeon. Dungeons map 4/3, tap to add 1 colorless, 3 tap, venture into the dungeon, activate only as a sorcery. Rare card, Frogimit 3 and 2 green, it's a 4/4. Trample and haste. Whenever this combat damage to a player, exile up to that many target cards from their graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature exiled this way. You gain 1 life for each non-creature card exiled this way. Instrument of the Bards for 1 green, legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a harmony counter on it. For 3 and 1 green, tap, search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to the number of harmony counters on it. Reveal it and put it into your hand. If that card is legendary, create a treasure token, then shuffle. It's not a bad card. It's a 1-drop legendary artifact, and remember that in Modern Horizons 2 there is Erza Saga, which can fetch this particular legendary artifact. It's quite slow, yes. For 3 and 1 green, you search for your library for a creature card with mana value equal to the harmony counters, but at least if it's legendary, you're going to create a treasure token. Orcus, Prince of Undead for X, 2, 1 black and 1 red, it's a 5/3 flying and trample. Enters the battlefield, you choose 1. Each other creature get -X/-X until end of turn, you lose X life. Return up to X target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, then gain haste until end of turn. Triumphant Adventurer for 1 white and 1 black, it's a 1/1 with that touch. As long as it's your turn, it has also First Strike. Whenever it attacks, you venture into the dungeon. Volo, Guide to Monsters for 2, 1 green and 1 blue, it's a 3/2. Whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, copy that spell. Delina, Wild Mage 3 and 1 red, it's a 3/2. Whenever it attacks, choose target creature you control, then roll a dice 20. If your score is 1 to 14, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary and has exile this creature at end of combat. If your score is 15 to 20, create one of those tokens, roll again. If your score is 15 to 20, you will continue to roll again and create those tokens. Mythic cards, the deck of many things. For 5, it's a legendary artifact. 2, tap, roll a dice 20 and subtract the number of cards in your hand. If the result is 0 or less, discard your hand. 1 to 9, return a card at random from your graveyard to your hand. 10 to 19, draw 2 cards. 20, put a creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. When that creature dies, its owner loses the game. Personally, I'm already in love with this card. It's a perfect card for Commander, but I think it can see also play in Standard, goes into any deck because it's colorless. Less cards you have in hand, more are the chances of a high score. Score at 20 and you can put a creature card from any graveyard, even your opponent's, and when that creature dies, its owner loses the game. Take a creature card from an opponent's graveyard that can sacrifice itself, and that opponent will lose the game. That was the last cards for the day 3 spoilers of Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realm. Tune in tomorrow for more spoilers of this wonderful set and anything related to Magic the Gathering and the collectible world.